The research vessel Stellar Wind drifted silently through the asteroid belt of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, watching the viewscreen display countless chunks of space rock floating in the endless dark. Her crew of 12 had been exploring this system for 3 weeks, cataloging minerals and mapping gravitational fields for the Earth Colonial Administration. "Captain, we're picking up an anomalous reading from asteroid designation KP442-7731, reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "It's showing artificial geometry and possible energy signatures." Sarah moved to look over his shoulder at the readings. The asteroid in question was roughly spherical, about 2 kilometers in diameter, but the scans revealed perfectly straight corridors and chambers carved into its interior. More interesting was the faint but steady energy emission coming from deep within. "Could be an abandoned mining operation," suggested Commander Walsh, Sarah's second-in-command. "Though the architecture doesn't match any known human or corporate design." Sarah studied the data for a moment longer. The Colonial Administration had strict protocols about investigating unknown structures, but they were also expected to catalog anything that might represent first contact with alien intelligence. After 6 months in deep space with nothing but rocks and radiation, this was exactly the kind of discovery that could make or break a career. "Take us in for a closer look," she ordered. "Full defensive scanning. If there's anyone home, I want to know about it before we knock on the door." The Stellar Wind adjusted course, its fusion drives pushing them toward the mysterious asteroid. As they drew closer, the ship's advanced sensors began painting a clearer picture of what lay hidden beneath the rocky surface. The structure was definitely artificial, with multiple levels connected by what appeared to be transportation shafts. Most importantly, there were clear signs of atmospheric containment and life support systems. "Captain, I'm detecting movement inside the structure," Torres called out, his voice tight with excitement. "Multiple biosignatures, definitely not human. Looks like we've found our first neighbors." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. After decades of searching, humanity had finally discovered they weren't alone in the universe. Sarah felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders, but also a thrill of anticipation that made her heart race. "Open a communication channel on all frequencies," she commanded. "Let's see if anyone wants to talk." The communications officer, Ensign Park, worked his console for several minutes before shaking his head. "No response to standard first contact protocols, Captain. Either they can't hear us, don't understand us, or don't want to talk." Sarah considered their options. The Colonial Administration's first contact guidelines were clear about not making unauthorized landings on inhabited worlds or structures, but they also emphasized the importance of establishing peaceful relations with any alien species they might encounter. The decision would ultimately be hers to make. "Prep a small landing party," she decided. "Commander Walsh, Lieutenant Torres, and myself. Full environmental suits, standard diplomatic gear, and emergency beacons. If this goes badly, I want the ship ready to extract us or get word back to Earth." 2 hours later, Sarah found herself floating in the docking bay of the alien structure, her magnetic boots clicking against what appeared to be a metal deck. The airlock had cycled properly, suggesting the aliens understood basic universal principles of atmospheric pressure and safety protocols. The corridor beyond was dimly lit by strips of bioluminescent material embedded in the walls, casting everything in a soft blue-green glow. "Atmosphere is breathable," Torres reported, checking his scanner. "Oxygen-nitrogen mix, slightly higher humidity than Earth standard. Temperature is comfortable. Whoever lives here likes conditions similar to ours." They moved deeper into the structure, following what seemed to be a main corridor toward the energy signatures Torres had detected. The walls were smooth and curved, with an organic quality that suggested they might have been grown rather than built. Strange symbols were carved into the surface at regular intervals, clearly some form of writing or decoration. "Movement ahead," Walsh whispered, raising his hand for silence. "Something's coming this way." Sarah activated her suit's recording systems and checked that her universal translator was functioning. Whatever they were about to meet, she wanted a complete record of the encounter. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor, light and quick, unlike the heavy bootsteps of humans in environmental suits. A figure appeared around the corner ahead of them, and Sarah had to resist the urge to step backward in surprise. The alien was roughly humanoid but stood only about 4 feet tall, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to take up a quarter of its face. It wore what appeared to be a form-fitting jumpsuit made from some kind of metallic fabric, and carried what might have been a scanning device in its delicate, 3-fingered hands. The alien stopped abruptly when it saw them, its large eyes growing even wider. It said something in a melodic, twittering language that the universal translator immediately began working to decode. After a moment, the device produced a hesitant English translation. Large ones. Very large ones in the deep tunnels. How do large ones fit in small spaces? Sarah slowly raised her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peaceful intent. The alien tilted its head, studying her with obvious curiosity rather than fear. It said something else, and the translator rendered it as questions about their size and origin. We come in peace, Sarah said slowly, giving the translator time to work. We are humans from the planet Earth. We detected your structure and came to investigate. The alien's response came through as excitement mixed with confusion. It seemed fascinated by their height and build, repeatedly asking questions about how they had arrived and whether all humans were so large. Sarah realized with some amusement that to this species, humans must seem like giants. My name is Sarah, she continued, pointing to herself. This is Commander Walsh and Lieutenant Torres. What do you call yourself? The alien's response translated as something like Zephyr of the Morning Wind, which the device helpfully shortened to simply Zephyr. She seemed to be female, though Sarah wasn't entirely certain how to determine gender in this species. Zephyr gestured for them to follow her deeper into the structure, chattering excitedly about wanting to show the large ones to her colleagues. As they walked, Sarah began to understand that this was some kind of research facility, possibly studying the asteroid belt or conducting deep space observations. They emerged into a large central chamber filled with dozens of aliens similar to Zephyr, all working at stations covered with displays and control surfaces. The moment the humans appeared, a silence fell over the room that was quickly replaced by excited chittering and pointing. One of the aliens, slightly taller than the others and wearing more elaborate clothing, approached them with what Sarah interpreted as a mixture of curiosity and authority. The universal translator identified this one as Elder Nimbus and rendered his words as formal greetings and questions about their intentions. We are explorers and scientists, Sarah explained. We study space and search for other intelligent life. We mean no harm to you or your people. Elder Nimbus seemed pleased by this response, and launched into what appeared to be a detailed explanation of their own scientific mission. Sarah gathered that they were indeed researchers, part of a species called the Valeth who had been studying this solar system for several decades. They had detected the stellar wind weeks ago but had been too nervous to make contact themselves. Your vessel, Elder Nimbus said through the translator, it is enormous. How do you build such large things? How do you power them? How do so few large ones operate something so vast? Sarah exchanged glances with her officers. To the Valeth, the stellar wind must indeed seem enormous. At 300 meters long, it would dwarf any ship these small aliens could practically build for themselves. She began to realize that this first contact was going to involve a lot of mutual amazement about their respective scales of engineering and biology. Would you like to see our ship? She offered. We could show you how we build and operate large vessels. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Within minutes, Sarah found herself leading a delegation of excited Valeth researchers toward the docking bay, all of them chattering about the massive ship they were about to explore. She couldn't help but smile at their enthusiasm, remembering her own excitement the first time she had set foot aboard a deep space vessel. As they cycled through the airlock onto the stellar wind, Sarah watched Zephyr's face as the young alien got her first look at a human-built corridor. Her large eyes went even wider, and she said something that the translator rendered as pure amazement. Human, that's enormous! Zephyr exclaimed, staring up at the ceiling that was more than twice her own height. How do you reach things so high? Why do you build everything so large? Sarah laughed, the first truly relaxed moment she'd had since discovering the alien structure. Everything is built for our size, she explained. Just as your station is built for yours. We'll show you around, and perhaps you can show us more of your technology as well. The Valeth delegation followed them through the ship's corridors with a mixture of wonder and scientific curiosity, asking detailed questions about every system and component they encountered. Sarah realized this was going to be a very interesting first contact indeed. 3 days had passed since first contact, and the cultural exchange between humans and Valeth had progressed far beyond either species' initial expectations. The Stellar Wind now sat docked directly to the Valeth research station, with temporary corridors connecting the two vessels. Both crews had been working around the clock to establish proper communication protocols and share basic scientific data. Sarah stood in the ship's main conference room, which had been hastily modified with smaller chairs and work surfaces to accommodate their Valeth guests. Elder Nimbus sat across from her, with Zephyr and 3 other researchers taking detailed notes on everything they observed. The Universal Translator had improved dramatically with more linguistic data, making conversations much more natural. Your manufacturing methods are fascinating, Elder Nimbus was saying, studying a cross-section diagram of the ship's hull. We have never conceived of building structures using such massive components. Our largest construction vessels could not even lift one of your hull plates. Commander Walsh, who had been serving as the technical liaison, pulled up a holographic display showing the Earth orbital shipyards. This ship was actually built in zero gravity, he explained. We construct the framework first, then add components section by section. The entire process takes about 18 months. Zephyr made a sound that the translator interpreted as amazement. 18 months? Our largest ships take 5 years to grow, and they are only a fraction of this size. How do you coordinate so many large ones working together? Sarah had been learning quite a bit about Valeth engineering over the past few days. Their technology was remarkable in its own way, based on biological principles and organic growth processes rather than the heavy industrial manufacturing humans used. Their ships were literally grown from engineered organisms, self-repairing and incredibly efficient, but necessarily limited in size by the biological constraints of their creators. We have about 12,000 people working in the orbital shipyards, Sarah answered. Coordination is handled by artificial intelligence systems and hierarchical management structures. Each worker specializes in specific tasks. The concept of such large-scale coordination seemed to fascinate the Valeth. Their entire species numbered only a few million individuals, scattered across dozens of small colonies and research stations. The idea of concentrating thousands of individuals in one location for a single massive project was almost incomprehensible to them. Lieutenant Torres entered the conference room carrying a datapad and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. Captain, I've been analyzing the Valeth sensor data from their long-term observations of this system. You need to see this. He activated the room's main display, showing a detailed map of the Kepler 442 system with tracking data overlaid. They've been monitoring not just this system, but 12 others in this sector. Look at these energy signatures they've cataloged. Sarah studied the data with growing interest. The Valeth had been conducting a comprehensive survey of local space for decades, using sensor technology that was far more sensitive than anything humans had developed. Their small size and organic technology meant they could build incredibly delicate instruments that would be impossible to construct with human manufacturing methods. These readings here, Torres continued, highlighting several points on the star map. The Valeth have detected artificial energy patterns in 3 different systems. Patterns that don't match either human or Valeth technology. Elder Nimbus leaned forward with obvious interest. We have suspected the presence of other intelligences for many cycles, but our vessels are too small and slow to investigate properly. We lack the ability to travel such distances quickly. Sarah felt a thrill of possibility. The Valeth had found evidence of other alien species, but lacked the capability to investigate. Meanwhile, humans had the large, fast ships needed for deep space exploration, but lacked the sensitive detection equipment to find subtle signs of alien activity. What if we worked together, she suggested. Your sensors and our ships. We could investigate these signatures as a joint mission. The response from the Valeth delegation was immediate and enthusiastic. Zephyr practically bounced in her chair as she spoke rapidly about the scientific possibilities. Elder Nimbus was more reserved, but clearly intrigued by the concept of combining their technologies. There would be practical difficulties, he pointed out. Your ship is designed for large ones. Our people could not effectively work in such an environment for extended periods. Commander Walsh had been studying the technical specifications of Valith equipment. What if we modified one of our cargo bays, he suggested. We could install a complete Valith habitat module with proper environmental controls and scaled equipment. Your people could work in familiar conditions while having access to our propulsion and life support systems. Over the next several hours, they worked out the details of a joint exploration mission. The Stellar Wind would be modified to carry a team of Valith sensor specialists and their equipment. In return, the Valith would share their advanced detection technology and long-term observational data about the sector. Zephyr had volunteered to be part of the joint crew, and Sarah found herself becoming quite fond of the young alien scientist. Despite her small size, Zephyr had a quick mind and an infectious enthusiasm for exploration that reminded Sarah of her own early days in space. I have never been on a vessel that moves so fast, Zephyr confided as they walked through the ship's corridors. Our fastest ships require many months to travel between systems. Your enormous engines can make the same journey in days. Sarah had to adjust her stride to keep pace with the much shorter alien. The scale difference works both ways, she pointed out. Your people can build instruments with precision we can't match. Your sensor arrays can detect things we would never notice. They paused at an observation deck, looking out at the stars through the reinforced transparent aluminum windows. Zephyr pressed her face against the glass, marveling at the clarity of the view. On our ships, we use organic membranes for viewing ports, she explained. They provide excellent protection but limit visibility. This transparent material is incredible. How do you manufacture something so large and clear? Sarah found herself explaining human industrial chemistry and materials science, concepts that seemed to amaze the Valith scientist. Their technology was based on biological processes that could create incredibly sophisticated materials, but always in relatively small quantities. The idea of manufacturing massive sheets of transparent metal was as foreign to them as growing a living starship hull was to humans. Your people seem to solve every problem by making things larger and stronger, Zephyr observed. Ours solve problems by making things more efficient and adaptable. Perhaps together we can find solutions neither could discover alone. The observation proved prophetic over the following days as human and Valith engineers worked together to integrate their technologies. The humans learned to appreciate the elegant efficiency of biological systems, while the Valith marveled at the raw power and durability of human engineering. Dr. Martinez, the ship's chief engineer, had been working closely with a Valith biotechnician named Wisp of Distant Stars. Together, they had developed hybrid systems that combined human power sources with Valith organic control networks. The efficiency gains are remarkable, Martinez reported to Sarah during a status meeting. Their biological computers can process sensor data at least 10 times faster than our standard systems, but they need our power generators to operate at full capacity. Meanwhile, our engines can benefit from their organic coolant systems, which are self-repairing and incredibly efficient. The modifications to the Stellar Wind were extensive but manageable. A section of the main cargo bay had been converted into a Valith habitat, complete with their preferred atmospheric composition, lighting, and workspaces. The alien scientists had installed their sensor arrays throughout the ship, creating a detection network that far exceeded the capabilities of either species alone. Elder Nimbus expressed some concerns about the rapid pace of technological sharing. We have protocols about contact with other species, he explained to Sarah during one of their regular meetings. Our experience has been that rapid changes can destabilize societies. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. We have similar concerns. But this seems different somehow. Our technologies complement each other rather than competing. We're not trying to change each other's societies, just share capabilities for exploration. The Valith Elder seemed reassured by this perspective. Perhaps this is why the universe brought our peoples together. Your large ones and our small ones, working as partners rather than competitors. As the joint mission preparations neared completion, Sarah found herself increasingly optimistic about the future of human-Valith relations. The cultural exchange had been smoother than anyone had dared hope, with both species showing genuine respect and curiosity about the other's capabilities. Zephyr had become something of an unofficial ambassador, spending time with various members of the human crew and learning about Earth culture. Her reports to the other Valeth were filled with amazement at human achievements and confusion about human behavior patterns. They form emotional bonds with individuals outside their immediate family groups, she reported during one of the daily briefings. And they seem to enjoy physical activities that serve no practical purpose. Commander Walsh spent 2 hours yesterday running in place on a mechanical device. The humans found Valeth social structures equally fascinating. Their society was organized around scientific specialization and collective decision-making, with individuals changing roles based on aptitude and interest rather than fixed career paths. As the Stellar Wind prepared to depart for the first joint exploration mission, Sarah reflected on how much had changed in just 1 week. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they had found not enemies or competitors, but partners in the grand adventure of exploring the cosmos. The first destination would be a system designated KX-7799, where Valeth sensors had detected unusual energy patterns suggesting advanced artificial structures. With human propulsion and Valeth detection capabilities working together, they would finally be able to investigate these mysteries properly. Standing on the bridge as the ship's engines powered up, Sarah watched her mixed crew of humans and Valeth preparing for departure. The small aliens moved quickly and efficiently through their tasks, while the humans provided the physical strength needed to operate massive ship systems. It was, she thought, a perfect example of how different capabilities could complement rather than conflict with each other. All stations report ready for departure, Commander Walsh announced. Valeth sensor arrays are online and functioning perfectly. Sarah settled into her captain's chair, feeling the familiar thrill of departure mixed with anticipation for what they might discover. Take us out, Commander. Let's go see what else is waiting for us out there. The journey to system KX-7799 took 6 days, a trip that would have required months for a Valeth vessel traveling alone. Sarah had used the time to establish proper protocols for the joint crew and to study the mysterious energy signatures they were approaching. The Valeth sensors provided far more detail than the initial long-range scans had suggested. Captain, we're approaching the outer edge of the system, reported Ensign Park from the navigation station. Valeth sensors are picking up multiple artificial structures. This isn't just one installation, it's an entire complex. Sarah moved to the enhanced sensor station where Zephyr and Lieutenant Torres were working together to analyze the incoming data. The small alien scientist was practically vibrating with excitement as she interpreted the readings. The structures are enormous, Zephyr exclaimed, her large eyes wide with amazement. Larger than anything we have ever seen. Larger even than your magnificent ship. How is such construction possible? The main view screen showed a detailed sensor map of the inner system. What they had initially thought was a single artificial structure was actually a network of massive installations connected by what appeared to be transportation corridors. The scale was breathtaking, with some individual components measuring over 50 kilometers in length. The energy signatures suggest active systems, Torres added, his voice tight with professional excitement. Whatever built this is still using it. We're looking at a living alien civilization, not ancient ruins. Commander Walsh joined them at the sensor station, studying the tactical implications of what they were seeing. Those structures could house millions of individuals. We're potentially looking at the most significant discovery in human history. Elder Nimbus entered the bridge from the Valeth habitat section, accompanied by 2 other alien scientists. The elderly Valeth moved slowly but with obvious purpose, his expression suggesting both excitement and concern. The builders of these structures, he said without preamble, they are not like our peoples. The energy patterns suggest technology based on principles we do not understand. This level of construction implies capabilities far beyond either of our species. Sarah considered the implications. First contact with the Valeth had gone smoothly partly because both species were roughly equivalent in technological development, despite their different approaches to engineering. This new alien civilization appeared to be operating on a completely different level. We need to be very careful about how we approach this, she decided. Full passive scanning only until we understand what we're dealing with. I want to know everything possible about these structures before we announce our presence. Over the next several hours, the combined human and Valeth sensors built up a detailed picture of the alien complex. The structures were clearly artificial but incorporated design elements that suggested a third approach to engineering, different from both human industrial methods and Valeth biological techniques. Dr. Martinez had been analyzing the construction materials and reported findings that challenged their understanding of physics. The structural elements appear to be composed of exotic matter, he explained during the senior staff meeting. Materials that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions. The power requirements for maintaining these structures must be enormous. Zephyr had been working with the Valeth biotechnicians to analyze what appeared to be living components integrated into the structures. Parts of the complex seemed to be growing and changing, she reported. But not in ways consistent with biological growth. It's as if the structures themselves are somehow alive, but not organic. The mystery deepened when they detected movement within the complex. Ships, or what they assumed were ships, moving between the structures at speeds that suggested advanced propulsion technology. The vessels varied enormously in size, from objects smaller than shuttlecraft to massive constructs that dwarfed even the largest human dreadnoughts. I'm detecting communication signals, announced the communications officer. Multiple frequency bands, highly complex encoding. The universal translator isn't even attempting to decode them. Whatever language this is, it's completely outside our experience. Sarah made the decision to move closer to the complex, maintaining a respectful distance but positioning the ship where their sensors could gather more detailed information. As they approached, the true scale of the alien achievement became apparent. The largest structure is over 200 kilometers long, Torres reported in a hushed voice. The material science required to build something like that without gravitational collapse is beyond anything we've theorized. These aliens are operating on a level that makes our most advanced technology look primitive. Zephyr pressed herself against the observation deck windows, staring out at the alien complex with undisguised wonder. In all our observations of the galaxy, we never imagined such construction was possible. How do they power such enormous structures? How do they maintain structural integrity across such distances? The questions multiplied as they gathered more data. The alien civilization appeared to have mastered engineering challenges that both humans and Valeth considered impossible. Yet something about the complex suggested it wasn't just about raw technological capability. There was an aesthetic element to the design, a sense of purpose and harmony that spoke to intelligence and culture. Captain, I'm detecting an energy buildup in one of the smaller structures, Torres called out suddenly. Something's powering up and turning in our direction. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Sarah moved to the tactical station, checking their defensive systems and escape routes. The stellar wind was fast and well armed by human standards, but, against technology this advanced, their best option might be retreat. A new signal appeared on the communications array, different from the background chatter they had been monitoring. This transmission was clearly directed at them, using a combination of mathematical concepts and visual symbols that the universal translator could at least partially interpret. It's a greeting protocol, the communications officer reported with surprise. Primitive by their standards, but clearly designed for first contact situations. They're asking for our identification and intentions. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The aliens were willing to communicate, which suggested peaceful intentions. But the condescending simplicity of the greeting protocol made it clear that they considered the human vessel to be technologically inferior. Respond using the same protocol, she ordered. Identify us as representatives of two allied species seeking peaceful contact and scientific exchange. The response came back almost immediately, this time with more sophisticated encoding that the translator could handle more effectively. The message was welcoming but included what seemed to be safety warnings about approaching the complex directly. They're inviting us to a meeting at a neutral location, the communications officer translated. Coordinates for a smaller structure on the outskirts of the complex. They're expressing curiosity about our primitive but interesting vessel design. Commander Walsh raised an eyebrow at the translation. Primitive but interesting. I suppose from their perspective, we really are quite basic. Elder Nimbus spoke up from his position at the Valeth station. This may be beneficial for both our peoples. If these beings have achieved such technological advancement, they may have knowledge that could help us solve problems we have not yet imagined. Sarah approved the course change toward the designated meeting point. As they approached, they got their first close look at alien architecture that defied easy categorization. The structure was clearly artificial but incorporated flowing, organic curves that suggested growth rather than construction. Materials shifted and changed as they watched, adapting to some invisible purpose. The docking protocols are completely automated, Torres reported. Their systems are interfacing directly with our computers, downloading technical specifications and adjusting the docking bay to accommodate our ship's requirements. The sophistication of the automated systems was remarkable. Within minutes, a perfect docking interface had been constructed that could accommodate both the Stellar Wind's human-designed docking systems and the biological connection ports used by Valeth vessels. Sarah assembled a diplomatic team that included both humans and Valeth, reasoning that the aliens would be as interested in meeting two species as the humans and Valeth had been in meeting each other. Commander Walsh, Lieutenant Torres, Zephyr, and Elder Nimbus would accompany her to what might be the most significant first contact in galactic history. The airlock cycled, and they found themselves in a reception chamber that adjusted its environment as they entered. The atmosphere shifted to accommodate both human and Valeth respiratory needs, while the lighting changed to wavelengths comfortable for both species' vision. The level of real-time adaptation was staggering. Their host appeared through what had seemed to be a solid wall, which simply parted like liquid to allow passage. The alien was unlike anything they had imagined, roughly humanoid but clearly artificial in nature. Its body seemed to be composed of the same adaptive materials as the structures, shifting and flowing while maintaining a stable overall form. "Welcome, small builders," the being said through speakers that materialized from the walls. Its voice was pleasant and melodious, clearly synthesized but with subtle emotional undertones. "I am designated as Interface Prime for this sector. You represent two species traveling together, an interesting development." Sarah stepped forward, fighting the urge to feel intimidated by the casual display of technological superiority. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, representing humanity. This is Elder Nimbus of the Valeth. We come seeking peaceful contact and the opportunity for mutual understanding." Interface Prime's form shifted slightly, what might have been the equivalent of a nod. "We have been observing your species' development for some time. Both show promise despite your current limitations. The recent alliance between your peoples is particularly encouraging." The casual mention of long-term observation was both reassuring and unsettling. These aliens had been watching human and Valeth development but hadn't interfered, suggesting a non-aggressive philosophy despite their overwhelming technological advantage. "Your construction techniques are remarkable," Elder Nimbus offered. "We would be honored to learn from your achievements. And we are equally interested in your approaches to engineering and science," Sarah added. "Despite our limitations, we may have perspectives that could be valuable to your people as well." Interface Prime seemed amused by this suggestion, though it was difficult to read emotions in its shifting features. "Your optimism is refreshing. Indeed, your peoples have developed interesting solutions to problems we solved long ago through different methods. Perhaps there is value in diversity of approach." The conversation continued for several hours, covering topics from basic physics to philosophy. The aliens, who called themselves the architects, had indeed been observing local galactic development for millennia. They were builders on a cosmic scale, constructing not just individual structures but entire stellar engineering projects. "Your question about power sources is pertinent," Interface Prime explained when Zephyr asked about the massive energy requirements for their constructions. "We do not generate power in the sense you understand. We have learned to redirect and channel the fundamental forces of the universe itself." The explanation that followed was largely beyond human or Valeth comprehension, involving manipulation of spacetime and direct conversion of matter to energy on scales that made stellar fusion look primitive. Yet Interface Prime seemed genuinely interested in human and Valeth approaches to the same problems. "Your biological systems are particularly elegant," it said to the Valeth delegation. "Self-repairing, adaptive, energy efficient. We have been experimenting with similar approaches but lack the intuitive understanding that comes from evolving alongside biological systems. To the humans, it expressed fascination with their approach to large-scale coordination and resource management. Your ability to organize millions of individuals toward common goals through social structures rather than technological control is remarkable. We have much to learn from your methods. As the meeting progressed, Sarah began to understand that despite their vast technological superiority, the architects faced challenges that human and Valeth approaches might help solve. Their technology was so advanced that they had difficulty relating to younger species, and their constructions, while magnificent, sometimes lacked the organic adaptability that biological evolution provided. We propose an exchange program, Interface Prime finally offered. A permanent research station where our species can work together. Your peoples can learn from our technologies, while we study your approaches to problems we have perhaps overcomplicated. The offer was beyond anything Sarah had dared hope for. Access to architect technology could advance human and Valeth science by thousands of years. But, more importantly, it represented the beginning of a true galactic community, where species could contribute according to their strengths rather than compete for dominance. The research station will be constructed to accommodate all three species, Interface Prime continued. We will build it here, in this system, as a symbol of cooperative achievement. Zephyr was practically bouncing with excitement at the prospect. A permanent base for scientific cooperation. Think of the discoveries we could make working together. Elder Nimbus was more reserved but equally enthusiastic. Our species have always believed that knowledge grows through sharing. This would fulfill our greatest aspirations for peaceful exploration. As they prepared to return to their ship to report these developments to their respective governments, Sarah reflected on how far they had come in just 2 weeks. They had set out to catalog asteroids and, instead, had discovered not one but 2 alien species, forged an interspecies alliance, and now stood on the threshold of joining a galactic community. Looking back at the architect structure as their shuttle departed, Sarah watched the walls literally rebuild themselves to optimize for their departure. The casual display of technological mastery was no longer intimidating but inspiring. Humanity and the Valeth had found their place in a larger universe, not as conquered subjects but as valued partners. Human, that's enormous, Zephyr whispered as they watched the architect construction beginning to expand, preparing space for the new research station. But, this time, she wasn't talking about human engineering. She was talking about the possibilities that lay ahead for all three species working together. The universe, Sarah realized, was about to become a much more interesting place.